We're struck dumb.
It's lovely to be here with you again,
So
Ali.
good.
It's fabulous.
So great.
All the way from Australia.
Regional New South Wales, Australia. My
Regional New
God.
South Wales. And we're in Glasgow again.
Yay!
Hurrah! We can do the Magi Ali Poetry Show the way it should be done. So, Ali, to kick off today, I was wondering how you challenge yourself in your work. Do you feel you challenge yourself? So,
yeah, I do. I mean, I think. I don't know how I do it, except that every day that I sit down to write, I'm always trying to make it something that is original.
Yeah.
You know, and so like everybody, I throw down the cliches to get the poem down. You know, but I know I'm going to have to go back and make that a lot more interesting. And I guess you know, that's my challenge to myself, really, make this interesting. And how do I do that? By labouring and labouring and labouring till it's just becoming silly now, until I get the line exactly as I want it. I mean, there are other ways that I might challenge myself, and lately I just completed a project which is very different to poetry. We can talk about that another time, but it is so different to what I've been doing. And I guess the challenge there felt like, you know, how am I going to share this with people who already know my work and hopefully quite like it?
yeah.
Is it going to be, you know, is it going to find an audience? And I guess, you know, there's that sort of inner challenge of put it out there anyway and see, you know, that kind of, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's fear around it, but...
So when you say that, so this new project, which I do know about obviously, but it's not poetry.
It's not poetry, no.
And therefore that in itself is a challenge, although you have done memoir before, it is a challenge to, if you like, break out that voice, because you've such a distinctive poetry voice. We're very used to your really unusual metaphors, your ability to focus on a metaphor, which in a way I often read them and think, that shouldn't work, but bloody hell, it does work, and it works brilliantly. And that's the freshness that you bring. But that freshness is also, it's not in a sort of highfalutin way at all. It's usually based on something, and I remember the trolley in the supermarket with the wheels that won't go the right direction, and that's so familiar to our everyday lives. And you are able to use that and make poetry from it. And
interesting. I think my whole life is rooted in those kinds of everyday banal things, you know. And if I'm talking about food imagery in my poetry, which I very often am, it's never a lobster bisque. It's always beans on toast, or, you know, fried eggs from Aldi.
I'm going to challenge you here, because I do think you have a lobster bisque in one of your poems. It seems to ring a bell with me.
Me?
You certainly have a fancy fish that you fry in the poem during COVID.
Oh, do you?
Was it lemon sole?
Is it lemon sole?
Yeah, I know. I mean, lemon
okay,
sole.
lemon sole. I mean, it would have been on.
It would have been on special.
But you know, you did once say to me, and I think this is going to encapsulate what you're saying, that my metaphors are daringly banal. Do you remember that? It's one of my favourite quotes ever. But what about you? How do you challenge yourself when you're writing? What's happening?
I think if I find that I'm writing the way poems, just the same sort of styles that I've used before, the way I've done before, I get bored.
Yeah.
And I think I have a real thing about not boring myself.
Yeah, you can't bore yourself if you're writing.
Because in a way, so say for example, if you take Wild Women of a Certain Age, that, I mean the poems are all different, but that theme, that style of poems, when something like that is done and it becomes quite well known, people expect that from you. And so, and that's what they want, actually, you know, and if you're doing a reading, that's what they want.
Yeah.
But I want to challenge myself to go beyond that, because I've done that now. I mean, sometimes a poem just comes in its own and you don't have an awful lot of power over whether it's in a style that you've used before.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed, you know, particularly since we got to know each other and became friends, I've really enjoyed following your ideas of pushing the metaphor
Mm-hmm.
and trying to dare myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, how far dare you go? I mean, this is quite difficult for me to do though, because I also believe in poetry, more or less on first read, being very accessible. I
Yeah.
don't want to close people out, but I do want to try to surprise and
Yeah.
try to keep the reader's interest
Mm-hmm.
By throwing things in there.
Mm.
I mean, which belong. I mean, I'm not just going to throw anything
Yeah.
in, but by pushing, you know that question, which we sometimes say to each other and then burst out laughing. Can you really say that?
Yeah.
Can you really say that in a
Yeah.
poem? And I think restrictions on women, certainly years ago, were probably stronger.
Yeah.
But a lot of men are caught within that as well, of, well, but can I really say that?
Yeah.
And there could be, and we're not talking about necessarily sexual or
Mm-hmm.
or body
No.
parts or anything
No.
like that. It could be anything, because there are lots of conventions
Mm-hmm.
in, we've got good manners. We've been brought up to have good manners. So there has to be a reason when you do something too that
Yeah.
pushes
Yeah.
that
I think,
beyond.
when you say, can I really say that? Because I've said that myself a lot of the time. And what I always urge people to do is to say that. Like, say it. You're in the privacy of your own laptop
Yeah.
and your own space, and nobody ever needs to read it. But see if you have that urge to say that seemingly unsayable thing, you can put it on the page and then see what you can do with it.
Yeah.
It may not stay in that form, it may appear to be too rude or too whatever, but you can do something with it. So I would never stand in the way of a thing that wants to come out. Don't stand in the way of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because as soon as that voice comes in which says, can I really say that?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to, even if it's just for yourself. Put it
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
page and see how it looks. Keep it to yourself for a wee while and
Mhm.
and sit with it and think, actually, I can, but now I need to,
Yeah.
that I've said that, I need to frame it properly or to,
Yeah, or
to make sure.
take the harsh edges off or however,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
say it.
Uh-huh.
It's liberating, I think, to say it, to
Yeah,
really write it, and
Yeah. I mean, we've spoken about that before, I think, at these shows, and my problem with a mother that, or I might not mention this, my mother, I was brought up not to swear at all, not to
Yeah.
swear at all.
yeah,
And in my house, swearing included saying, "Oh, that bloody thing,"
yeah.
which my father, who was a
How things have changed.
yeah, who was a slater and plasterer and worked on building sites, very, very male world where the language would have been very colourful. The only word he was allowed to say in our home was bloody. So that bloody thing, oops, just hit my finger with the
Mm.
hammer. Oh,
Yeah,
bloody,
yeah.
bloody hammer. But
Gosh, quite
you can
different
see I'm
manners.
starting to get off. I mean, you see I'm starting to get off in all this bloody stuff because I was so repressed as a child. And my parents did that for the best possible reasons. I mean, we were brought up not to name call either, and I like to try and keep to that. So we all have, as you say, that wasn't the way it was in your house. We all have these different restrictions coming with us as
Yeah,
baggage.
yeah, absolutely.
And
there's readers.
uh-huh.
Readers will come across our work and,
Uh-huh.
and feel,
Yeah.
maybe not ambivalent or perhaps really not like the way that we've expressed things, but it's for me it's always about how does this feel for me, is this poem working for me, and it can never be about an audience, but of course we hope that the work will
Right.
go
So
and please people.
that's really worth saying. You're writing for yourself, but at the same time you're writing as communication. So you are hoping that it will communicate with someone. You're hoping you're not willfully obscuring
Yeah.
what it is you're trying to say, but you're hoping that you're expressing it in a fresh way, which will make. I mean, what is it we're looking for when we are writing a poem from our reader? What are we looking for? Them just to. What's the best thing if a reader says it to you?
An actual reader, or just what are we hoping a reader will get from? I don't know. I'm hoping for an emotional response. I'm hoping for some kind of I'm not hoping for life-changing anything that's going to be life-changing.
Yeah.
But I am hoping, I suppose, when it's done and I'm happy with it, and then I'm just like, okay, I can put this out into the world now. Of course, one hopes that someone will, because I guess what I'm trying to do is convey an emotional experience that I've had,
Mm-hmm.
and I suppose we want the reader to perhaps feel that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but like we've said before, you know, readers will bring a whole different life experience, and you know, and as we've also said before, we're repeating ourselves today, but that
we might have just said this to each other though, Ali, because we have an awful lot of conversations, and our idea was full of stuff. So now I can't remember what's been in previous shows and what we're actually saying here for the first time.
Yeah. No, neither can
But I mean, the word I would use for that is, what I'm looking for is connection.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it connects, and when it's at its best for the reader, and this is for me as a reader, it's like getting a little electric charge from the poem.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and that thing of, oh my goodness, someone understands me.
Yeah, there is that.
I'm not the only person
Exactly,
in the
but I
world.
think it's more specifically for me, it's about getting the electric shock or electric charge as I'm writing it. You know, I think I want that. I want my own electric charge. And you can't control that once it goes out into the world, and someone will get an electric charge or not.
And someone else will hate it and go, why do people keep going on about this poem? It's terrible.
Yeah, of course, as we do.
Yeah,
All the time.
You know, you've given away our secrets, we do. It's because but that thing about challenging yourself, for me, I think the worst thing that could happen to me as a poet, I mean, you know, I might stop writing, but it's worse than that. I could, and I think this is what you've mentioned it this way, I would be boring myself.
Yeah, there's something about that, to bore
God,
yourself.
yeah.
I mean, how awful, and to bore an audience, my God. But I mean, somebody said once a long time ago, and no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader.
Oh, right.
Something like that, and I just think that is, if you're not kind of excited by your own work.
Yeah. Yes, and I mean that works the other way as well. No,
what would be the point if you
no laughter, no pleasure in the the writer, no pleasure in the reader. I think that is something. So, but that said, I have read poems and novels where the writer has said that it ripped their heart out to do it. So when we say tears or pleasure, it doesn't mean there's no hard work, effort. It's not all just fun. In fact, I think if my writing just went towards, because both of us as writers are capable of being very entertaining and hitting those funny notes. But if I thought that was all I was doing, I remember that many years ago I was doing an event with Michel Faber, the novelist. He was a lovely, lovely man, and I retained great fondness for him. And he, afterwards when we were chatting, he said to me, which kind of really took me aback at first, he said, oh, when you started I thought it was all going to just be fluffy. Frothy, sorry, not fluffy, frothy. He said, but then I was so pleased that it wasn't just, because we can start off often with our sets, particularly the poets rather than novelists, we'll start off with something which is going to entertain and hopefully bring people in towards you before we shove in the emotional dagger.
Yeah, well that's what, that was that lovely quote that I was reading the other day by Billy Collins, where he's talking about a poem, and what he's doing in the poem in the beginning is he's trying to step into a canoe. So he's kind of, the first couple of lines are a bit like that, as you step into a canoe, and then he gets to the meaty stuff. Yes. It was such a lovely way of talking about
it is.
A poem, how you write it, or how you start it.
Because the best ones for me are the ones where when I start, I'm not absolutely sure, you're getting into that canoe, it's a bit rocky, first few lines, and you're thinking, this may or may not turn into something. And then, and that's the best bit, when your conscious mind sort of goes into retreat and just by getting into the rocky canoe of the first couple of lines, something else starts to emerge from underneath and becomes what the poem is actually about. I think that's
it's almost like a sort of really short preamble into the meat of the poem, I guess.
And if you have to, you go back and you can take those first couple of exploratory, shaky lines out. Quite often, you just come out. Sometimes you need them because it's like a wee glide into the poem, and then you need that to bring the reader in. Sometimes it doesn't work to just be too abrupt and.
It doesn't, but I mean there are times I also don't mind being hit over the head from the first line. Yeah. I also don't mind that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, of course, and that's what we're talking about is this variety. So one of the ways you challenge yourself with the poem. I mean, it's interesting because we seem to be talking from that question of challenging. Neither of us have really mentioned form. It's not said I'll challenge myself by doing a hybrid or a sonnet or any of these forms. I as a poet really cannot think like that.
I don't do for those kind of like haiku or haiku ones.
Or even
I broke the rules.
Sonnet. I mean, there's beautiful sonnets that I love reading them. I mean, there's nothing. It's so satisfying. But I think we both, our poetry has got a. Would it be true to say it's got a colloquial element? We use speech rhythms. Yeah. And sometimes I think when people use speech rhythms, free verse, there are people who think that there's no craft in that, but that's like saying there's no craft in jazz music. You have to know what you're doing. And we'll talk about this another time because we were talking about it recently privately, is line breaks.
Oh yeah.
And
I love a line break. I love a line break.
Yeah, you also write very often in quite block poems.
Lately it's all blocks. And I often say to people, you should vary that a bit on the page how it looks, and I go, oh, actually, I've been doing this now for a while, just blocks.
Yeah, but what I would say about
I kind of love that. I mean, some poems want
that. I know,
but
I was going to say, what I would say about your blocks is that your rhythms are so sure-footed, even when you're doing jazz rhythms. They're so sure-footed that, and you tend to use the slash for the line break as well.
I love a slash.
Yeah,
I love a slash. I was at risk of overusing them. I just wrote just did one the other day, but the slash works.
It does work, and I sometimes I find myself putting them in there and taking them back out.
Yeah, me too. And then
should it be a double slash?
Double slash.
Yeah, and it's similar to using the white space on the page, really. Yeah. Although it is much. White space gives this peaceful moment. That's the way I think of it. So say you've got a stanza break, and there's that drop down, then that white space is like a deeper breath before the next bit. Whereas when you do it with slash, I think even if you put in a double slash, I think people read it faster.
There's a bit more urgency with the slash.
Yes, yeah, which really suits poems like your poem about the earth overheating. What's the title?
Oh yeah.
Ali's poems are very titles tend to be long, so I forgive myself.
I can remember it either. In the event of a lack of oxygen, that one's called.
Oh, it's not that long.
Not that long.
In the event of a lack of oxygen, which is a brilliant start.
Thank you.
I love that poem.
Yeah, thanks.
I had the pleasure of reading that poem at a Scottish CND event.
Oh yeah.
In March. It was supposed to be January, and Ali was going to be taking part, and then it had to be postponed because of a storm. My goodness, talk about climate change. Because of a storm, and then Ali was back in Australia, so she kindly asked me if I should do it, and I loved reading that. I got quite emotional. Oh yeah, a bit further in. Oh my goodness.
Mission accomplished. The emotion was transferred.
Of course, yeah. So will we leave? We're both very into challenging ourselves.
I mean, if you're not if I'm not challenging myself, what am I doing it for? If I'm not trying to be original, I'm not trying to push myself and push through the laziness, which could be, it's fine. It's fine as it is. It can never be fine. That just can't be an out.
It's also not just the laziness, it's in the rutness. You know?
Well, I think there is a lazy, and there can be. I mean, I speak for myself.
But sometimes it's just a rut and you're stuck in, so it's not necessarily lazy.
But I'm talking about the laziness to push through. I mean, we've all sat at a line going, this is the worst line I've ever fucking read, and I wrote it. What am I going to do about it? You know, and I've sat at my laptop screen for many an hour, if not day, could be weeks, and I have to make it better.
Have you ever tried just cutting it out?
No, I can't cut it out. Even look at my body language right now, I just felt like that. I can't cut it out. No, because I don't know why, I just can't, I don't want to cut it. I want to make it work. And I would argue that takes, it's easier to walk away and cut it out. And honestly, sometimes cutting it out
it can be hard. Come on, there's no anesthetic. There's no anesthetic.
To
no
me,
painkillers for you afterwards.
To me, because I have worked with some people in the past, and I might challenge on a line, and the response might be, "I'll just cut it out," and I'm like, "Oh no. No. I think you know when my first book came out, and it wasn't poetry, it was a memoir, and I started working with the editor, and typically you'll have a whole year of edits when you've got a book coming out, and she said to me in the beginning, if you listen to what I've got to say, this will make you a better writer. This is where the real writing begins. I'd already written the whole book, right? And I thought, oh, how fabulous am I, you know? And now it's going to be published, but holy shit, you know, there was so much work to do to that. And I did listen to her. Yeah. I don't know if it made me a better writer, but it certainly made me drill down into lines that weren't quite working. Can you see that? And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I can see that now. Make it better, but it wasn't. These weren't easy fixes. I had to turn myself inside out to make those fixes. And so I've kind of continued on with that. I like turning myself inside out to make it something that is palatable to me. Yes.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I had a very strong thing at the start. If I'd written it, that's what it was, and there it was. I mean, talking about decades ago. And mostly I was getting away with it because the poems were working and they were getting published.
Getting away with it? I'm sure they were. I was getting away with it. I'm sure they were fabulous. I don't know they were getting away with it.
No, I think there obviously been stuff built up inside me and it needed that out. And when I then came to poetry and had input from a poet, I think Brian McCabe was the writer in residence where I was living in the Stirling area. And I was totally naive. I mean, I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. But Brian's way of teaching me was just to say, well, it was to bring me a pile of his own books, a pile like that, of his own poetry books, mostly by women, but he knew that I would relate to. And I returned them all. But I will always be so grateful for that because there was no really modern poetry in my local library, which wasn't Stirling. I'll not name the town, but it was close by. And I had looked there for poetry and there wasn't. So but this is well pre-internet, 1985. And when I looked, him giving me these poems and setting me off in that right direction, really meant a lot. So I did give books to a lot of people after that as a tutor. I repeated that. You can see I've kept quite a few of the books. So. Although poetry is all over there, which is it's got shelves to itself, which is off screen. But so we will challenge, and that's another way I challenge myself. Is if I read something that really sets my hair on fire, I will I was rewriting that in my line. I was thinking, if I was Ali Whitelock, I would write. If I read something that really sets my knickers on fire, then I will let. I won't go on. I don't try to write like that, but I will let that percolate with me, and say, you need to challenge yourself more, because there is something happening in that type of voice that really excites me.
There's something about giving yourself permission, right?
Yeah,
So like that,
that's
and
right.
not caring if anybody else likes it. In fact, it can be quite exciting to think a lot of people might not like this.
Oh.
You know, it can be quite exciting.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, I mean, interesting enough, when I wrote the poem No Angel, which some of the viewers might know, because I mean, even at the time, it got published right away in a very small magazine from the north of England, I think. But it did get published, then it got picked up for anthologies, and then any time that I've put it on Twitter or X, or whatever you want to call it, it has gone, you know, it's got a big reaction.
Yeah.
It's been shared a lot, and a lot of comments. But when I wrote it, to be honest, I needed to write it, but I actually wasn't sure what I had.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of me, I'm pleased to say, that just thought, well, I fucking like it.
That's it.
And when I say like, I like it because it's saying something, it's saying it's strong, it's saying it in an unusual way, and it needs to be said. The society needed that poem, which was about child abuse first of all, but the 9-year-old, but then about how the judge in court treated her. And it became a very famous case, but just at the time...
We should put the poem down in the thing, comments.
Oh yes, can do, yeah.
But that would have been a poem that would have been fueled by, not that it was rage on the page, but it would have been fueled by such disbelief and horror. And yet, and so it kind of, I imagine, sort of like poured out of you or gushed out of you, and it's so powerful.
I mean, my own children were around that age at the time, and just the injustice, and I think injustice is a good place to write from, and my God, we're not short of coming in, but that's quite unusual. I mean, that's the difference between thinking, oh, I'm going to write about an atrocity, you know, which is happening, God, you know, say there's plenty of in the world at the moment. It's a difference between that and that really visceral reaction where it's as if the body and the brain go for it together.
Yeah, that's right.
And the visceral aspect of it overcomes any censors, overcomes whatever. And with that one, I don't even know why it landed on the page in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to, you know, do wee tidy ups, you know, but as I say, it was that one. This is why I write.
Yeah,
this is why I write.
I like that idea of the brain and the body sort of working together.
Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes when I'm talking about writing and when I feel like I've got a poem that's coming and you know, it's part way down, I kind of feel it in my thighs. And I don't even really know what that means, but just like, oh, my thighs are exhausted. But anyway, so the body does come into it. Or it can come into it. And maybe that is partly what sometimes when things are missing or it's not quite working yet, it's because it's all too cerebral maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
but
bringing the body in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are very scared to bring the body in like that, or bring those very, I mean that's the opposite of writing. The emotion can recollected in tranquility. If that was what that one was writing, the emotion from that moment, but the passion was so strong, the desire to do what I could in my own small way, which didn't really affect this child's life, but affects how society works. That was important to me. Yeah. So it had to be written.
And a poem like that, you know, it's so, you know, you write it, it goes out into the world, and, you know, very different, obviously, to reading an article about the abuse of this child. If you get that in a poem, it sort of enters another human in a different way to a factual article, and it is so powerful. Anyway, we have to you have to read the poem. We have to.
But that's the same with You're in the Event of Oxygen. Why I got emotional reading it is because it's about the planet heating up and what we're losing and the wrong things that we value. And it's very much as Ali Whitelock poem, the journey it takes you on, it keeps taking twists that you're not expecting. And at the same time, when you get to the end, you think, yes, that has to be the conclusion.
I think, just in hearing you say that about, it takes you on different twists, I think that's what's happening when I'm writing unconsciously.
Yes.
For me, there are the twists will come for whatever reason. It's I mean, it can also be quite straightforward.
We're getting into that rocky canoe and then going down the rapids,
well.
and just hanging on in there as it tosses you about, and have the courage to hang on in there with it. Because also what you might just get in that first draft anyway is a bit of a mess. So,
yeah, you don't know where the poem is going, and there's another thing, and we may have talked about that before, but to sort of stay out of your own way while you're writing the poem, we can have a preconceived idea about what we think a poem is going to be about, but in fact, you go down the path of the poem and you suddenly find you're talking about grass-fed butter, there's some on the table there, grass-fed butter, and you think, but this is meant to be a poem about, climate change. Go with the grass-fed butter, follow the trail, take yourself off the beaten track, go through the undergrowth and hack your way through and see what comes of it.
Well, see what comes of it. I think that's pretty
great point to end it.
Yeah, and before we get more fresh tea and some of that grass-fed butter. And thank you very much for watching today.
Thank you.
We've had fun, and I hope that you have too, and that there's something enriching as grass-fed butter.
Wow, this is just so perfect.
So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We shall see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's hope we pressed record.
I know. So I know.
It's funny. I should have said, we've already been talking for 4 hours before we did the show.